Greetings, my beloved. I am, yes I am, Ekara, once prince of the old Lemuria, and now, in your future now, king of that which is called the new Lemuria. And you are all here, not as servants, not as disciples, but as equals. And it is my honor that I may now convey this truth that I will convey to you right now onto you. There are many things that we need to talk about today. Several things, in fact, so I will ask my partner, which is my now self, to translate correctly. You are sitting here in a very special place. Again, we find ourselves in that which you call today the United States, although you are no longer in California. You are now in Nevada, of course, very close to the supposed city of lights, although we would call it the city of non-lights. Very close to Las Vegas. And you are sitting here near the Cathedral Rock, which is part of the Charleston mountain. Now before we continue, we want to tell you that the next 3 Ekarayas, of which this is the first, will be held near very special vortex energy places. This place, Cathedral Rock, near Charleston Mountain, is one of these places. You see, if you connect the dots, literally from Charleston Rock onto La Madre, and onto the eventual outcome of our small journey here, Rainbow Rock, then you will find yourselves connected to 3 separate vortex energies, which all combined create a giant vortex unto themselves. Why are you doing this, dear fellowship? You might wonder. Well, all of this traveling that you are all doing is part of bringing back the energy of the old Lemuria and transforming it to the energy of the new Lemuria. You as travelers are responsible for activating these energies, but I want, and all the others want, to let the listener to this message know that you also have a part in this. Those who are now at home listening to these messages are the ones who will pick up the energy that this fellowship here is loosening, is reactivating, and those at home will transform it into the energy of the new Lemuria. This is because of the heart. Where we are now sitting, near Cathedral Rock, is that space which you would call a chakra center for this vortex. And it is that which you would call the heart chakra. This is why this Ekaraya today will focus on love. 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 Love has been so much misunderstood in the last few years on this planet Earth. It has been misconstrued. It has been raped even. From its very roots, it has been plucked and turned into something that it is not, something which creates a form of dependency. While love is an energy that continues to grow, continues to expand, and always returns to the one who has initiated it. These are some of the things that we will talk about today. And of course you all know that these words are coming from your very experiences. So thank you for sharing. But before we go into this, before we will talk about love, there is a couple of other things that we need to talk about. First of all, while this space that you are in right now can be called the heart chakra of this rainbow vortex, the next space that you will visit, which is, of course, Mount Charleston, well, that could be called the head chakra of this rainbow vortex, while the last space that will be visited is to be called the third chakra, the action chakra of this vortex. Hello. Isn't it beautiful how little interactions are made, how little connections are made, and how love will now stem forth from those two that have just passed between our energy. So, just a reminder, you are now sitting in the heart chakra. We will then move on to Charleston, Mount Charleston, which can be called the head chakra, and then we will activate this vortex energy to make it into a portal in the action chakra, which will be the Rainbow Mountain itself. What a beautiful name it has been given. Now, before we go on, several other things, as I just said. As you know, things have been changing on this planet, and they have been changing greatly. This series that we are now creating, all of us together, called the New Energy Human series, will be part of this change, of course. But there are so many others who are traveling, so many others who are exploring this great 12th planet of free will. And all of these others are coming together very shortly. You may not be aware of this, but for many, many, many years, many like myself and like yourself have been traveling this planet Earth, making sure that this planet could continue, even though there was darkness, even though there was fear, even though there was pain. I'm talking about more than 100,000 people who have done this in the past and who will continue to do this. But we must let you know, I and all the others, that this number is not yet complete. There are still those who are awakening into their full potential, so that in the end, in a couple of months already, we will have a group of 144,000 human angels traveling the planet. And this, of course, is a number which in mathematics would mean nothing, but which in geometrical mathematics means unity, purity, oneness. For this 144,000 group creates the soul of the very one that initially walked the planet Earth at first. You may not fully understand the things that we are saying, but the reason why we are saying this is that there is many others that are still yet ready to be awakened. And you might be one of these, listening to these words, and you might feel the call in your heart. The New Energy Human series has been created and is being created especially for these people, so that they may find the power, the tenderness also, the fortitude and the strength, if you will, to embark on their own great journey of awareness. This is what is going on planet Earth right now, and it is one of the most important things that are going on. Last time that we spoke to you, we talked about several different timelines which were still occurring next to the one I, Ekara, am in right now, transmitting these words to you. The good thing is that although in the meantime things have shifted greatly and many more negative timelines had been created, well, these have now been discreated again. And you will be pleased to hear that only 2 continue to exist at this point. These 2, however, are very stubborn. They are very deeply rooted into fear and into sadness. And these 2 emotions are the only things that can create these 2 timelines, which of course we do not want to see happen. Fear and sadness, all being created out of an energy of non-love, an energy of non-joy, and an energy of non-freedom, which, of course, as you know, in the meantime, is the energy of dependence. For why would you fear that which you already are? And why would you feel sad about something which you can never lose? The energy of dependence creates the illusion of separateness and creates that fact that you and yourself might be separated from those around you. And this is the energy of dependence. This is what dependence does. It latches onto you, you see, so that you may never lose that which you already have. And of course, as we are saying these words, the trees are also listening in. And here the winds come now, as these winds will transfer the energy behind these words to the rest of these mountains. Ah yes, the vortex is awakening. The vortex that you are sitting in has already been awakened by others who have come before you. The next vortex that we will visit has also already been awakened, and also the third one. But what has not yet happened is the power of 3 vortices combined into one. And as this happens on Rainbow Mountain, or as we would call it, Rainbow Rock, we like to alliterate, you will see what will happen directly to you when a vortex turns into a portal. In the past we have spoken a great deal about portals and about vortices, and we have always said that although there are many vortices on this planet and many portals, they all stem from within. They all come from within. Now that which has been theory to you, fellowship, you will experience in a practical manner very soon, maybe even as soon as tomorrow, depending on how fast you work, that you are the ones activating the portals, for you are the portal energy, bringing in new, undefined energy into this planet Earth. You see, just remember this as you go on your travels. So, about 40,000 people that have yet to awaken is a very, very small number compared to the amount of people now inhabiting planet Earth, is it not? We have always said you are already in the energy of completion. You just have to walk the linear path. This is the only reason why it is possible for me, why I am able to speak to you in this manner. For the completion has already happened. And if you feel this in your heart, if you feel this in your very soul, then you know why you are on the planet and what you are truly doing. But now, on to that which is called the new energy human. For this is not just meant for the 144,000 who will be awakened in total. It is also meant for everyone else. For everyone here on this planet Earth is a new energy human, whether they like it or not. Some are still in denial. Some are still trying to continue their old lives and to continue their old lies even. But they cannot. They can no longer obtain this energy which they have been holding on to for so very long. They need to let go. And everybody is in a state of letting go at this point. We will not again discuss letting go of illusions. We have talked about the 6 great illusions. We have talked about the 3 universal or unconditional laws of truth, there being universal love, universal joy, and universal freedom. But we will now explore these 3 universal laws in greater detail. For this is what is necessary. It is one thing to listen to the word unconditional love or universal love and to say, yes, I recognize this. Of course I want to be in unconditional love. Of course I want to love everything around me and every human on the planet. But how do you make this into a practical tool? How do you make this into a practical reality? This Ekara and the next 2 Ekarayas will bring this into your realities. All of those listening to this right now. And let us start with unconditional or universal love. For this is the chakra center that we are in right now. So let the elements come up. And let the power of love surround you. It's interesting that the wind will always bring the other elements in, is it not? This is because the wind is such a good carrier. A carrier for all the energies. As light contains all the other elements, wind often is the messenger of all the other elements. This was the reason why people in Lemuria used to be telepathic or tele-empathic, if you will. And unfortunately, this has always been the reason why Atlantis and all the other continents and societies that came after tried to be in the head. For you see, they had a memory of the power of wind. And as you know from the channelings that you call the I Am Presence, which are in Dutch, as you know from these channelings, the wind is the one communicating from one energy to the other energy. So you will oftentimes feel wind as energies are being transmitted, as they are being transmitted right now. And yet this isn't just the wind that you are feeling. It is all the elements, and especially it is contact with your own consciousness that is now coming in. So enjoy this for a minute. And listen to what the wind is doing. Listen how this vortex that you are sitting in really works. The energy goes round and round and round. And with each new cycle, it lifts itself up until the wind dies down again. And then it lifts itself up again, a new cycle starts. As we have said before, energy tends to raise itself naturally. And this is exactly what a positively oriented vortex has always done. It lifts those within up naturally. Now, a vortex is not something that can be created by a human. It is present on the planet anyway. What humanity can do is turn a vortex into a portal, which incidentally is the next step of all vortex energies. What is turning a vortex into a portal? It is nothing more than connecting this free energy that you see, feel, hear all around you here. It is connecting this energy into the human unity consciousness. That is what it does. That is why humanity even is on the planet. It has always been this way. You come here to connect the energy of Gaia, the energy of the earth, and of all the elements all around you, to what you would call unity consciousness. And as you do this, on every single planet that you visit, so you raise this entire universe into the power of awareness, which is now power. This can happen at any given time. But I am digressing. I love to speak about vortices. They have always been a fascination for me. In the old times of Lemuria, I used to travel around. This was my great passion. Traveling around from place to place, finding these spaces within and sometimes upon the earth, sometimes in the skies even, so that I could feel this energy movement, this raising of energy, and that I could turn them into portals so that each and every human connected to unity consciousness could feel this. And what a beautiful time that was. But anyway, we were speaking of universal love, weren't we? To explain what universal love is, I will tell you a story. It is a true story. But first, before we go into this story, I would like you to think back to the first part of the New Energy Human series, where we talked about two great tools for human evolution, new energy evolution, The first of which, of course, is the Akene. And the second of which is unshattering yourself from time and space. Do you remember the Akene that you can activate by first becoming aware of the energy around you, all around you, and then bringing this energy into your very heart, the human heart. And then, from that point, transmitting this energy to the back of the skull, where is located the heart of all things, so that it connects to every living thing on the planet. And from there on, you send this energy to the top of the brain, the third brain, which would be called the memory of the now. And from there on, you transmit it again into the human heart. Do you remember that this is the Akene? Well, if you have done this, then you can, before we continue, take your time to unshatter yourselves again, to take all of your energy pieces, bits and pieces back from all these places through space and time where you are connected, are still latching on to things which are no longer there because they are not in the now. So take your energy back. Take your energy back. The story which I like to tell entails, in fact, the third tool that is needed to become a new energy human. And this is, as some will already know, that which we call energetic discipline. But what exactly is energetic discipline? It is two words, yes, and you have heard these two words in the last few days. But what is it? It is very simple. And again, it deals with that which we call focus. Now, I have spoken about focus in the last few connections with all of you, but I have not yet explained how the energy of focus truly works. I have not yet explained either how energetic discipline truly works. You must know that energetic discipline is very, very different from physical, real discipline. Discipline that you know on planet Earth, which entails schedules to keep, points in time that you must follow so as to ascend, or whatever you want to call it. Discipline has nothing to do with army rules. Discipline has nothing to do with waking up every single day at a specific time and living your life in a very, very shallow yet disciplined way. That is not what energy discipline is about. Energetic discipline is only about understanding the path that energy always travels. And it has to do with your chakras, it has to do with all types of energy. And this is one of the greatest tools that you can ever obtain if you wish to be this new energy human. For energetic discipline will take you out of the box, out of the old way of thinking that was present here on this planet Earth, that has been present for such a long time. And this energetic discipline can be attached to the three universal laws. As I said before, today we will connect it to universal love. Next time, when I come back in, by the way, the second vortex, feel it. Have you ever noticed how a vortex responds when you call its name? When I return to the second vortex, we will speak of the connection of energetic discipline onto universal joy. And the third time, when we are on Rainbow Rock, I will speak of the connection of energetic discipline onto universal freedom. For what else is a rainbow than a representation of freedom, bringing together love and joy? That is what it is. So now, on to our story. And it is a story that is a part of the old Lemuria. It is a story of myself. I like to talk about myself, for I understand that I am all things. This is not ego. This is just conscious humor. It is a story of myself and my beloved at a time which carries the name Eja'e. So let's soar back into the past. Do you feel how strong a connection of timeless love truly is? Even though this name, Eja'e, is spoken many hundreds of thousands of years after the original date of existence, the world still responds. Sitting in nature is better than sitting in some sort of classroom, is it not? Yes. Okay, sweet vortex, you may calm down now. Calm down. Oh, you want to play? Great. I will continue with my story, however. It is a story, as I said, based on myself, Ekara, and my beloved Eja'e. Thank you for your quiet. I know I haven't spoken much of myself since I returned into this energy. But I was in line as Prince of the old Lemuria to become the king of the old Lemuria, which never could take place because of the destruction, of course, the disruption of the Lemurian energy, the destruction of the continent. But in my youth, I had to learn many things, and I was very mental, although the Lemurian energy was a connection of the heart at all times. There were still a lot of things that I, as a small child called Ekara, needed to learn. And I studied a great deal, year after year after year. I did not take the time to go outside and to enjoy this beautiful energy, as I truly understood what my mother and my father, the queen and the king, kept telling me, that I needed all this wisdom, that I needed to learn all of these things, so that I would be able to take their place one day. Little did they know at the time that the energetic connection of their love, which created me, already gave me all of this wisdom. So most of the time I was very bored sitting in my room. I was pretending to study, but I was just playing with myself in more than one way, so to speak. I was finding out all about my chakras, including the third one. And the third chakra was a very interesting journey of discovery, I might add. You have no idea about Lemurian sensations that you can experience, but these will come back to you. Anyway, before I get distracted again, so there I was in my room studying or pretending to study day after day after day. But what I was truly learning, for this was something that you can only be got from experience, is connecting with all things around me. It was a great shock to me when at first my study desk started communicating with me. I had no idea this could happen. I had no idea this could be possible at all. That a inanimate object could communicate with me. At that time I learned that this was not such an inanimate object at all. It was wood, of course. It was made out of wood, and this wood could communicate. And at that time I started listening to all the stories of those objects around me, for these things, desks, chairs, the bed, the closets and everything, although we had very little need for objects in our Lemurian houses, of course. Much was based on energy. These things told me their stories. And they had many stories to tell, for what now was a desk was part of a tree that had stood many, many, many miles from my original home for many, 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 many years. And it told me the stories of each and every person that passed at the time, besides the tree, next to the tree. Each and every person that came had a story to tell. And so through my desk, which was made of the wood of the tree, I connected to these hundreds of people that lived in my past. It was a beautiful time of self-exploration. I did not yet understand that I also, in my dream of awareness, for awareness is also a dream, just as the mind is a dream, in my dream of awareness, that I was all of these people, and that I was listening to my own history. But it was a beautiful time of self-exploration. And when I was done with all the wooden objects around me, I started to learn how to talk to the rocks that built our castle that I used to live in. And also these had stories to tell that even dated back further down the road, millions of years of evolution that this great planet Earth had known. It was beautiful to start to understand the true nature of planet Earth. For these rocks that made up the walls, they still remember the time of fluidity, you see. They still remembered the time before they were rocks. And they remembered the time that they were part of the molten lava of the Earth. And so they told me the stories of all the light beings that came from the cosmos and that connected to this lava. And even today, as you sit here and you look at these rocks and these little bricks around you, and those great mountains that you see, they still carry the energy, dear ones, beloved ones, of all the light beings that at that point came in when the Earth was still a gigantic universe of molten lava. And when I was done with the rocks, which took me many years, I was almost finished with my education at the time. I started becoming aware of the communication I could undergo with animals. Now, animals in the time of Lemuria were a very different breed than the animals that you see today. Things had not yet gone wrong between the consciousness of humanity and the consciousness of the animal, you see. And things had not gone wrong between the consciousness of humanity and the consciousness of the mineral world and the consciousness of the plant world. So all of these things could speak. The reason why they now became silent and a bit afraid of humanity is that every time when they opened their hearts, when they opened their mouths, they get shut down or chopped down or destroyed to make into roads. So that is why the mineral world and the animal world and the plant world has gotten silent. But as you are here today in this vortex, you are becoming aware of the communication that is going on around you. You must not think that I was sitting there in this energy of my old castle where I was prince, and that these things were talking to me in words. We had very little use of words at the time. Even the Lemurian words that are starting to resurface today are just one word which would make into a single sentence or even two sentences in your language, which is English, which is sometimes the reason why I have difficulty translating into English. I tend to ramble on and on and on and on when I speak English. It is because I have so many things to say in Lemurian, and they translate into many more words into your English language. So when I was done with the plant life, the trees, and with the rocks, and with the animals, my vision, my perspective broadened. I had learned so much about the evolution of the planet, even the evolution of the cosmos, as many of the rocks, they still remember the time when they were meteors, you see, falling from space, falling into the molten lava of the Earth, being drawn in by these huge magnetic and gravitational forces. So I even got stories that I heard from other planets. It's beautiful time, beautiful time. And so I started to become more self-aware. And so my parents, which were also aware in their own way, they started to get a little bit worried. For I was never communicating with them, you see. It wasn't necessary. I had all of these friends around me, as I'm sitting now surrounded by all of these friends. So what use could I have talking about the kingdom? Talking about the trouble that started to exist in the heart of humanity, in the heart of Lemurian. That they were closing their hearts. Yes, of course they were closing their hearts. They weren't listening. They weren't listening to the trees. They weren't listening to the rocks. They weren't listening to the animals. And I've tried to tell this to my mother. And I've tried to tell this to my father. But I was very little when I started telling them this. And so they had to laugh. They thought, our little boy, girl, Ekara, he is making up stories, he is fantasizing. And they thought it was just games I was playing. But they weren't games. They were so much more. They were truths. And even at that time, I started to learn about the concepts which you call universal love, universal joy, and universal freedom. I started to learn of these concepts. The problem was, the things that the trees and the rocks and the animals could tell me, they were based on their reality, not on human or Lemurian reality. So I had no friends. I had no one to talk to. I had nothing to communicate with besides these universal friends of mine. And as they told me about universal love and universal joy and universal freedom, I could not bring this into action. For these things only enter into action when they are experienced with all of the others around you. And I tried to experience it with my mother, and I could up to a point, but as you have seen her today, she was also like this in the past. She was very stuck up in ritual and in all of these things which governed the kingdom. She will not like me telling this, but anyway, I am grown up now. And I started expanding my consciousness even further. And I found nothing. Nothing. Only more trees and more rocks and more animals. And it was a very strange sensation to me to understand that here I was, looking out onto the world, opening my heart to the universal love that my rock friends and tree friends and animal friends had told me about. And yet there was no reflection. As I understand, you are now sitting in Vegas. Well, near Vegas, at least. If you were to try this here, you would also see that there is no reflection, that there is no answer of the calling of your heart that you pulse outside. This was my experience in Lemuria. You must understand that Lemuria had been around for a very, very, very long time before I came in. You see? So the great principles of awareness that existed in Lemuria were already dying down at that time. And every night when I lay in bed, I opened my heart and I made this circle a little bit further, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. And I had almost connected to 2/3 of what you would call planet Earth. 2/3. Envision me sitting on top of the planet, making this circle bigger and bigger and bigger. 2/3 of the Earth that I could not communicate with. I was becoming very, very frightened at the time. For what would happen if I were to go to the final place, which would be the entire other side of planet Earth? and I would find nothing. Would there be a point to continue being alive then? Would there be a point to take upon my role as king that I would one day have to take up? If there was nothing left? And how could I, as a small child, be the one to awaken all of these hearts? It seemed pretty impossible. And that's when my friends told me for the first time about energetic discipline. They said, keep expanding, keep looking. You will find yourself again. I didn't understand what they meant, for I did indeed what they said. I kept looking. And the very last night, I remember, it was my mother's birthday, or Carnation Day as we used to call it. And I was alone in my bed, as usual. It was also the day that I would turn 22, which in this time is a master number. Little ants, go away. I again opened my heart, and there was yet a final piece of the puzzle that I had not yet completed. And I found what I was looking for. Eja'e. Sometimes a vortex can overdo it, don't you think? So when I opened my heart one last time, afraid that I might not find anything at all, I completed the three-dimensional circle, and I ended up in my heart on the exact opposite side of the planet, which was also Lemuria at the time. Lemuria was not just one continent, you see, it was the entire planet Earth. And at the exact opposite side of the planet Earth, I found someone, Eja'e, who was doing the exact same thing. And this to me was magic. I found someone who had also learned how to communicate with the trees, how to communicate with the rocks, and how to communicate with the animals, who had learned the same truths, and who would now be on the same quest. How quaint! Be on the same quest, opening her heart up, and also arriving at that point, also at the age of 22. It was like what you today would call a twin flame, you see. It was like what you today would call mere chance, maybe, but to me it was proof of everything my plant friends and rock friends and animal friends had told me. That no one in this universe is truly alone, for you are all things. And if you exist in this universe, there must be another, existing in exactly the same energy. This is what I found. I will not say the name again. And so at first I thought my heart was fooling me. But it was possible for me, for the very first time, to communicate with someone else on this intense a level. Such intensity, dear ones. Such intensity, beloved. It was grand, it was magnificent, it was beauty. Of course, there was no physical contact, since this person was on the opposite side of the planet. There was no physical contact. And also at first I thought I was dreaming. I thought I was making all of this up. And maybe this was a period of great darkness for me, because maybe I had envisioned all of these things, communicating with all the things around me. And so again I tried. I remember at one evening when, for some reason, Eja'e was not available to communicate, I stood up and I got out of my bed and I went to my bedroom window, which looked out over the great valley of the main city of Lemuria, which name I will tell you about later. And I opened my heart once again, and I shouted from the heart, "Can anyone hear me?" There were many people still walking, for this was, again, 1 year after the original birthday of the queen. So this was 1 year down the road, and all of Lemuria was still awake. "Can anyone hear me?" my heart shouted. No one could. And again, I started communicating with Eja'e for an entire year, sharing stories, for she had heard other stories, other things that the plants and the rocks and the animals could tell her. And again a year passed and I turned 24. Again, my mother, which would always prevail, would have her birthday, so I would be in my room, getting very, very, very frustrated at that point. And again, Eja'e wasn't available. So again I got up, and this time I decided not to wait for my heart to do the calling. I remember that probably for the first time since years, I opened my mouth, and when the partying was going on down below, I shouted from my lungs, from all my might, "Can anyone hear me?" And the partying stopped for just a couple of seconds, as some people looked up to where the noise was coming from, and then the music started again, and it was gone again. The next day, when I was 24, the next day, my queen mother walked over to my bedroom, and as usual she did all of the talking. And she said it was time for me to start learning about how to be the king. I said to her, I have learned these things all of my life. I said it with my heart, and of course again she could not hear me. She was very worried. How could a son that was mute in her perception could become this new king? So they decided that a strong personality next to me would have to be the one to also govern the supposed kingdom of Lemuria. And so a quest started in Lemuria, a quest to find a queen. Now, you must know, although there were no countries and there were no borders in the entirety of Lemuria, there were energy spots, so to speak, energetic vibrations that would overlap. And if you left these energetic vibrations, then you would get into another vibration. This was the way Lemuria was governed. And as we got into the other vibration, people often had small difficulties with each other because it was a different vibration. At first this was celebrated, these differences. But by the time I was born, small difficulties started rising because people started noticing differences and not celebrating differences, you see. So my mother and my father wished for this queen to be in the exact same energy vibration that we were all in. It was what you would call a country, this energy vibration that was alike. It was like a country, like you would have a race in a country and a nationality and all of these things. But to us it were energy vibrations. And of course, the moment my mother told me this news that I would have to find a queen, I knew in my heart who this would have to be. Eja'e. But she was from the exact opposite side of Lemuria, which meant that these vibrations, that these frequencies could be no further apart. Where I would be the top vibration, she would be the low vibration, and vice versa. This was the difference that we had, and yet we knew that we carried within us all vibration, all frequency, and that we were both alike. This is the great truth that we shared over the 2 years that we communicated from the heart solely. We started understanding that all of the adults got it wrong, that all of the adults didn't understand that, how shall I say, energy is just energy, and these frequencies are all alike. you explain this to someone who has tried to keep a kingdom, a world, a planet together for the best years of his and her life, my father and my mother? They knew people were falling apart into different frequencies. But Eja'e and myself knew that this was wrong, that we carried it all within us. And in the end I got my way, as I turned down queen after queen after queen after queen. The mother and the father of me had no other choice but to start looking beyond the borders of our frequency. And so in the end, I communicated to Eja'e. She was not royalty. She had no great deal of money, which was not the way that you use money today. There were exchanges going on at the time, and she had very little practical value on the planet, for her family was a family of farmers. And so she could not possibly make her own way, making this trip halfway across the planet. It is our heart connection that made this possible. For everything that I had learned as the prince, I transmitted to her, and so she could start making this journey to the other side of the planet with great knowledge, great insight that nobody knew where it was coming from. It was coming from me. And at the same time, she had learned me great things about the other side of the planet, where things were not so much based on royalty and governing. They were based on farming. They were based on touching the earth, having contact with the planet, you see. In the end, to make a long story short, because this is not the point why I'm telling the story, to make a long story short, Eja'e ended up on the other side of the planet, ended up in our kingdom, and was immediately disliked by my mother. For she carried the exact opposite vibration, the exact opposite set of frequencies. It was my father, however, who saw in this a possibility. He saw in this the notion that this could bring Lemuria together again. If two opposite vibrations were to become one, well, this would reunify Lemuria. And so, gradually, and I will go into greater detail in another time, I will continue this story at another time, different parts of the story at least, so Eja'e eventually started being accepted by the royalty that was always around me. And she was being trained in the same way I was being trained, which wasn't being trained, we were just playing. And the time would come where she would become the queen and I would become the king. But we were tired. We didn't want this life for ourselves. As the months passed, we started noticing the lack of freedom that we would have in these roles that we would have to portray. And we decided to run. And run we did. We ran like the wind. We ran from vortex to vortex to vortex, which each time we turned into a portal so that we could cover great distances in short times. And we would always close down the portal as well so that nobody could follow us. And we ended up not on the surface of Lemuria. We ended up in the lower regions, for you see, the planet wasn't just the surface as you know it to be today. It had many different layers inside as well. This is what you would today call Middle Earth. So we ended up in Middle Earth. And there, we totally closed down. And this is the part of the story that will bring you into an understanding of what it means to have energetic discipline connected to love. So wake up if you were sleeping. As we had finally found each other, as we had finally found time for each other, we, who had always been communicating with the heart, focused solely on the heart frequency of each other. And so things became closer and closer and closer between us. This is, by the way, a projection of what many alike energies have done in their lives on Earth. We all went through the same learning curve, you see. Things went closer and closer and closer between us. And in the end, all we could see was each other. We had even forgotten at that point how to communicate to the trees, and how to communicate to the rocks, and how to communicate to the animals. And when we were almost drowning in each other, things started flaring up again. Things started shifting again. We had heard many tales about the destruction of Lemuria at that point, how the frequencies were tearing themselves apart, and how people were becoming more and more separate each day. And as we did not listen, the plants and the rocks and the animals did. And they started waking us up again. And they said, Eja'e, Ekara, you are needed on the planet. You must resurface. You must get above ground again. This planet needs a king. It needs a queen. Especially those who have communicated to us. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years of information have been passed into your very DNA, into your very system. Now, if this truth were to come out, it might just change the planet of Lemuria for once and for all. And I, Ekara, in all my stupidity, said no. No. These truths are too grand for others to understand. They are too big to comprehend. The people are doomed. And Eja'e, she said yes. Of course, we were of opposite vibrations, so this would be normal for us. She said yes, of course. Of course, this is the answer. I must go resurface again. I must tell the others what I know. I must tell of these great truths. And so our heart connection seemed to be over. And we seemed to go our own ways. I stayed in Middle Earth, where I was basically just waiting for the destruction of the planet, of the continent, of everything that was so glorious at the time. And Ekara, stupid as I was, never resurfaced again. Eja'e did. She decided that this was the best thing to do for all of Lemuria, for all of humanity, as you would say it today. So she resurfaced with all of this information, which you would today call crystalline information, because while we were on the surface of Middle Earth, which was below the surface of Lemuria, we decided it would be a good idea to store all of this information into the crystals of the planet itself, the crystalline grid. And Eja'e resurfaced, and she brought with her millions of years of knowledge. In the end, it turned out that she was too late, that this knowledge could only be received by a handful of people. For when she resurfaced, what she didn't know is the state that the heart of every Lemurian had gotten in. It was so closed off that no one could almost witness these truths again. But the story I told you now, which was not just the end of Lemuria, but also the end of our great relationship between Ekara and Eja'e, deals with energetic discipline. what the trees and the rocks and the animals had told us, especially the rocks coming from outside of the earth, had told us, is the way energy always works. It has to do with the infinity sign, you see. This is the flow of energy. And all the great continents knew this. Dear Sarah is here today. That energy that was called Morgaine, Avalon, knew this as well. All the great continents knew how energy traveled. It was an infinity sign. Only it wasn't just one pole of energy traveling the entire length of the infinity sign. It were two poles, making circles, creating the infinity sign as it was going round and round and round and round, each time connecting in the center and spreading out again, spreading the wings and becoming back into the center, having grown up the spiral. So this is the way that energy tends to raise itself naturally, dear ones. It just starts in the center of the infinity sign, the lemniscate, and it expands in two directions, creating two circles, becoming bigger, flowing up and connecting again, enriching the two parts and flowing up again, becoming bigger circles again and connecting again. This is energetic discipline, and this is the power of focus. You can see in this momentum also what focus truly means if you look at your own heart alone. If you look at your own heart and it creates a lemniscate, an infinity sign this way, then you see that focus is all about expanding your vision and at the same time narrowing it again. Being where you are now and expanding to all that is around you and taking all of this energy back into yourself again, into the heart of the infinity sign. It is also the same way between two humans, or three humans, or four humans. Heart love, unified, universal love, only works when you allow the heart connection that initially grows to separate itself, to expand, to experience, to grow, and come back onto itself again. Nothing really ends, ever. It always is just a process of growth and coming back, and growth and coming back. In the case of Ekara and Eja'e, it took many millennia for these two different frequencies were so very far apart, and there were so many experiences that had to be undergone. All of the experiences that we had learned from the trees and the rocks and the plant life and the animals that we had learned to experience before we could come together again, form the heart connection again. Now what happens? What happens when this circle, these both circles, expand and come together? The first time this happens, it goes very slowly indeed. It can take a long time, but there is growth. When these two dots form the infinity sign and come together again in the center, there is a speeding up, a process of speed that happens truly, which means that all of a sudden these points start traveling around the infinity sign really fast, so that there is a connection and yet there is freedom, so that there is love that is unified, that is a heart connection, and yet it doesn't focus onto the other, it focuses on growth. This is the very essence of the new Lemurian marriage, where two connect and then spread this love to all of the others around them. And as they do, they get even more connected, for all of these experiences bring them closer together. And again, and again, and again. And these are the great truths of energetic discipline. Energetic discipline entails focus. I have told this in the shape of a story for a very good reason, so that I wouldn't be teaching you. For I can't teach you about energetic discipline. It is something that you must experience for yourselves. But now the story has been passed on. And the memories of back then, are again present within you now. And you will learn what this really means. In your own consciousness, you will start to begin seeing the connection to the Akene, to unshattering yourselves, to the concept of focus and the concept of energetic discipline. It is the story of love, beloved. It is the story of love, and it is this story which I myself and all of you hearing this right now are already living in that which is called the New Lemuria. For all of these rocks and trees and plants and animals knew one great thing: time is endless. And although these things were taught to myself, Ekara, and to Eja'e, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, we could never put them into practice. We have finally been able to put this in practice in that which is called the New Lemuria. And this is why it is so important for us to be able to create this timeline, you see. This timeline which is already present. But if there is fear, if there is regret, if there is dependence, it is impossible for the heart connection to grow. And then you get into relationships. Relationships with lovers, relationships with parents, relationships with colleagues, relationships with personalities of yourself, aspects of yourself even. You will begin to understand more, for these Ekarayas, this one and the two to come, are very closely connected. And in the end, we will promise you that we will create a synthesis of all of this. As the story is complete in the next two of Ekarayas, we will take the time to talk again with you for an hour, where we can synthesize the essence of what we are now telling. And then you will see that we have gotten to a point where you will be much, much closer to what it means to be a new energy human. So these first few Ekarayas about the new energy human are very theoretical, although we are giving you tools. We are giving you tools which are pretty far removed from practical things. The latter part of the series will be about exercising, about taking these things and putting them into practice, for this is the only way that you can create the new Lemuria. It begins in your heart. Always. It always begins in your heart, and then it expands and it comes back to you. I invite you now to take the rest of the day to ponder on the Akene, on unshattering yourselves, on the story which you have just heard, which deals with energetic discipline and focus and universal love. For this was a love between me and Eja'e that was bigger than nations, that was bigger than continents, and that was bigger than time and space itself. It was not a unique love. It is the love that exists in the heart of all those who call themselves Lemurian and all those who call themselves human. It is not a self-centered love. It is an expanding love. And you will see how this connects to joy and to freedom tomorrow, when we return for the next part of this storytelling time that we have together. Know in the meantime that you are dearly loved, always, that you are greatly respected, and that many a master, that which you have called master and angel, walk with you, walk in front of you, walk behind you, walk to the left of you, and walk to the right of you. Each single step you take. So, from the heart of the new Lemuria, so it is.